I'm Joe Mullin. I'm the CEO of QuestEx Gold Copper. We're a junior exploration company based in British Columbia, in Vancouver. We have 5 principal projects in northern BC, mainly in the Golden Triangle and the Toodoggone districts. We have done exploration work on our Inel target at KSP this year, and also on our Sofia property in the Toodoggone. We have about 39 million shares outstanding, are traded on the Toronto Venture Exchange under QEX. We have 2 strategic shareholders in Newmont and Skeena Resources. Good to see you again, Matt.
Good to see you, Joe. But you're out and about, you're on the road, you're banging down doors. Where are you?
I am. I'm in New Orleans at the New Orleans Investment Conference. The conference started yesterday and goes till Friday. So it's a 4-day conference focused on US retail and high net worth investors. And we're hosting a lunch and presenting and trying to do more in terms of outreach to retail investors.
Fantastic,
especially in the US.
So US investors, are they? I mean, what are you seeing there? What's the kind of the mood of the nation down there? Because obviously the economy is troubling all across the world. But are people looking at gold again? Because it's had a quiet 12 months.
I think they're starting to think about it again. Especially on the share side, you've seen weakness in the market over the last, say, 3 months. But there's a lot of talk at this conference around inflation, and so people are thinking about what are the safe harbors in an environment where there is more inflation. And people are experiencing it in their businesses and their consuming habits, and they're starting to think about either buying another house or investing in gold. So.
Okay, you've got real estate guys at the same show, I guess. Then, what are you saying?
Yeah. This investment conference has real estate and exploration companies, gold, copper, also some physical gold coin companies, gold dealers. So it definitely speaks to investors that are interested in diversifying out of the broad equity market and also diversifying away from cash as well.
So what are these investors, sorry to dwell on it, I'm just intrigued by it, because one, it's nice to hear of physical conferences again, but two, what are these investors being told? Because there's gold as a safe harbor has long been the message of the gold, anyone who's got a vested interest in gold. In these economic times, it's troubling. So you would have thought people would be investing in gold as a matter of course, but they're not. They're looking elsewhere. So what are the companies at the conference telling these investors about gold and why they should be buying it?
Well, I think it's, to some degree, you already have a bunch of gold investors here. But then you also have people that have either cash flow from an existing business, or they have an existing portfolio and they're interested in diversifying into an asset class or into the shares of companies that offer, let's say, an insurance policy against inflation, and also in light of just the increased money supply, they're seeing inflation in the cost of gas and things like that. So as they're looking at their options and they're reallocating, they're taking a closer look and a longer look at some of the junior exploration companies, especially gold, but also other commodities as well. So that's something that you're seeing that's become very topical. Even though this conference has been around for a long time and has kind of had the same themes, they're now kind of making it more into the mainstream, just in light of the stimulus package, printing of money, and then people seeing the inflation and questions around supply chain and things like that.
And I know it's only day one official. I know you started yesterday, but full day today. Was the pushback being on you in terms of the conversations that you were having with some of these investors? Why gold versus battery metals versus housing? I mean, what do they want to know?
They're always curious about exploration. They have questions about, the whole exploration cycle. And sometimes if they're not already investors in an exploration company, they need to understand what the dynamics are for an exploration company in terms of, share structure, the type of budget you have, where your budget goes, and things like that. So sometimes you are talking to an investor who's more of a generalist than, say, some of our key shareholders who are either, already in the exploration or in the case of Newmont, in the mining business itself, or funds that, have stakes in a bunch of exploration companies. So sometimes there needs to be a little bit more of that educational conversation in terms of, explaining that we're an exploration company, we don't own a bunch of mines. And so, explaining where that potential lies is something that, it's certainly a challenge, and it's an exciting challenge because you kind of need to take a step back and say, how do I explain this to someone who's new to the opportunity?
Yeah, no, it's easy to forget, isn't it? We always sort of start halfway through a sentence in a way for these guys, and you need to make sometimes bring it back to the beginning. Just one more on this one, because I'm fascinated by it. It's kind of like a sort of trickle down economics here. So these people have made their money in a business or investments elsewhere, whether that be technology or crypto, and they're now saying, well, as a diversified portfolio, I better see what all the fuss is here about this natural resources space. So is that what you're seeing, or are these like first time investors?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of people. I don't get a sense that there are a ton of crypto people here, but you do sense that there are people who are from Dallas or Texas, someplace like that. They have a family business. They own some restaurants that have some cash flow producing business, and they come to the conference, and sometimes they come with the whole family, and they're kind of studying how to preserve the wealth that they've built over sometimes a couple of generations. So there is that kind of sort of genuine sort of curiosity and desire to kind of learn something, which you don't really experience in a lot of other conferences that you go to, right? But in terms of, our having, a wider shareholder base and reaching out to more people, and I think this is true for the junior exploration industry as a whole, you need to sort of be engaged in that conversation with generalists and people who are, crossover investors.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing that, Joe. I'm always intrigued by what you guys get out of these conferences, because me as an investor walking in, I want one thing and you need something else out of it. So I appreciate you sharing that.
And it's incredibly different from, say, AME Roundup in Vancouver, where you have, it's very much geared towards geologists who are in the industry, or PDAC, that's much more of a global mining conference. This is a different type of event.
Yeah, and we've also seen things like one-to-one, which is one I have enjoyed in the past, or similar. There are others.
Yeah.
They have investors who are already well established, right? In the sense they understand the space, the sector, what they're actually looking for. So it's nice for some of these generalist conferences to be part of the mix, as it were, for you guys marketing yourselves. And talking of marketing yourselves, you've just hired a new IR person. I think it's about time, quite frankly.
Yes. Yes. We hired Dan McIntyre. He's worked in the industry for about 25 years. He was with Pan Global, First Majestic, Frontier. So he has, experience working, doing IR, and the two of us have been manning the booth here in New Orleans. He also went to the Ontario conference with me. So it's good to have him there, and also have him working on increased outreach. And we're trying to do more investor outreach and marketing.
Good. Okay. Last time we spoke, back in July, you guys had raised, I think we talked about, you'd raised about $11 million in April to get things going. Because after, a few years of inactivity, you needed to get the ball rolling here. So we're here to talk about your drill program. You got 4,000 meters that you've announced at Inel. Can you tell us what's going on? How far have you got? Are you being restricted in any way by COVID assays, etc.?
So we the focus of our drill program, as you said, was the Inel target at KSP. We completed 2,600 meters at Inel, and actually 2,400 meters, and an additional 1,600 meters on the Sofia property. The drilling on Inel is focused on putting out a maiden resource estimate on that target. We're aiming to put that out probably sometime in April. Conditions for doing exploration were challenging, just in terms of pulling together resources. The labs have been slow. The weather itself didn't really cooperate. So we're really thrilled that we did manage to get those meters drilled. The vein systems at Inel are really overlapping vein systems. Some historic drilling had been done there, about 40,000 meters of historic drilling, about 20,000 of that from the 1980s, and another 20,000 in 2013 to 2017. So we already have a fair amount of intercepts that will go into the resource. We think there could be a re-rate in our stock and a real kind of step up in terms of our ability to reach out to investors who are focused on companies that have ounces of gold in the ground or gold equivalent, and are optimistic on that.
Okay, right. So just you can probably remind me and the audience here. Okay, there's a bunch of historic data. In terms of taking that historic data, updating it, you're going to have to do what? What type of drilling are we expecting to see? Because a maiden resource, good news, but it's got to be meaningful, presumably, or maybe you're approaching it in a different way. So how are you piecing all of these things together, please?
Yeah. So the drilling that was done historically was focused, the drilling from the 80s, in some cases, we only have partial intercepts where they kept the portion that had mineralization and they didn't keep the rest of it. In the case of the drilling that was done from 2013 to 2017, it was done more with a view to, chasing high grade veins and with more of a, underground mine model in mind. So this new drilling that we've done this summer and have now completed was with a view to taking that historic data and then putting on, with the benefit of a geological model, putting together a resource and working with a resource geologist on that. There's always that transfer from the exploration geologist to the resource geologist, and so we're cautiously optimistic about our ability to put something out that the market will be happy with.
But you're making a statement now that you're going to. So you've set the tone. So if you've got to be more than cautiously optimistic about it. You say we've got a definite. I just found intrigued about how you do piece these things together, because you've got different types of data from 80s and then from early 2013, 17. And you're going to do some drilling now. So what type of drilling do you need to do now to piece this together? Because it's like a broken plate at the moment. You got to bring it back together and be able to say, no, we're going to paint the right picture for you here, and this is how we're going to do it. So can you just explain it a little bit more?
Yeah. So I mean, we started out with the historic data. Sat down with the resource geologist and said, here's where we are. And what do we need to do to sort of put this back, into something that can resemble a resource? And that's what drove the drill targets. Some of them were revised as we were, conducting the exploration program, just in terms of, some of the challenges of the geometry around the target itself. It's very close to surface, so that's one of the good things that we have going for us there. And those drill holes that made up our program this summer were geared towards let's say stitching that plate back together again. So
it's a bad analogy, but it was what sprung to mind. But because it is a bit like that. So you're rushing headlong into, well, and you've announced, you're saying we are going to come up with a resource, but you in your head have got to have a view of, I think we can come out with something that's reasonable that will get us noticed. 30 million, where are you at? 30, 35 million, depending what day of the week it is. And you've been moving sort of, sideways of recent, which is, I guess, is a win in this market, is you've got to have a sense of, I am going to come out with X size resource because that's going to get us noticed. Otherwise, you just keep drilling. I mean, you've got money to keep drilling.
Yeah.
So why speeding towards this resource? What's the urgency?
We think that having ounces in the ground will help in terms of our investors and investor following, especially with some of those generalist investors that are looking for a metric to base their valuation on and their entry point on. That's one factor. The other factor is you have additional activity in our district, both at SK Creek and at SNP. And so those ounces can be of use to people who are potentially putting something into production or working on, let's call it larger plans of their own. You also have Seabridge that's over there on the other side of the Bronson Sulphurates district. Pretium is there with their Brucejack mine. So those are a little farther away, but we're just up Bronson Creek from SNP. You probably saw the announcement about Hochschild exercising their buy-in right there. So we're seeing more activity, and we feel that having some ounces in the ground will help us in terms of untap some value for shareholders in the context of the larger context of what's going on in our district.
Right, now we're getting to it. So that's what you're actually working to, is you're trying to get noticed by some of the people in the district doing, I say there's a lot of activity. You want to make yourself attractive to them, and that's how you're going to get shareholder value. So how far do you take this thing with the rest of the money that you've got before you sort of start inviting offers?
Well, it's you don't stop working as a exploration company. You keep exploring, right? So I think, you were talking about the period of the last couple of years where we weren't doing drilling, and we, as a result of that, we were kind of in the doldrums. Now we've come out of those doldrums because we have the cash and the treasury to do an exploration program with drilling on a couple of properties. And continuing to be active as an exploration company is an important part of maintaining that presence, right? Any other conversations that occur around the property deal or any other strategic investments, things like that, those just will occur and will take their own time. But you end up being on the back foot unless you're continuing to advance a multi-property exploration program.
Sure, but different companies have different approaches to this. I'm just trying to work out, in the mindset of, and the conversations from the board here is like, some people say, you keep drilling this thing out until you find the edges, right? And that's great. And they'll raise money and they'll keep doing that until they find it. You aren't choosing to do that. You're saying there's so much stuff going on around here. Maybe we can make ourselves attractive to one of them. Maybe we can, through, resource upgrades in the future, get to a point where this is useful additional answers for one of those bigger companies with bigger balance sheets, and we'll go off and do something else. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. Is that what the plan?
That's a scenario that we could be fortunate enough to end up in. In the meantime, we have, an excellent property in KSP. It's one of 5 properties that are our core properties. And we're fortunate enough to have supportive shareholders that, want to see us doing exploration work on the property. In addition to the Inel showing that we're putting maiden resource out on, we also did IP work on Sarasite Ridge and believe that will be an excellent target for a drill program in 2022. And so, continuing to sort of advance that and continuing to work on developing additional resources is something that is, our reason for being as a company.
So how much influence does Newmont or Skeena have in terms of how you develop this project? Because they've got projects themselves nearby, adjacent to your properties, right? So are they influencing the way that you're going about this, or are you very cognizant that they're probably the most likely exit for you guys in terms of creating shareholder value? I mean, what's the relationship in all that decision making?
They're both excellent shareholders. We were fortunate to get both of them to invest in the last round. Obviously, Skeena is intensely focused on Eskay Creek. In the case of Newmont, we were excited to see them acquire GT Gold, and they now own the Toodoggone property, which adjoins our Castle property. And they're focused on developing that. So they are, in the case of Skeena, they have a board representative, but we talk regularly to Newmont as well, update them on our exploration plans. They're not in a position where they're telling us what to do, but they have input, and we're respectful of them as shareholders.
Okay. And I mean, where you are today versus the size of those companies, perhaps you don't necessarily register at the moment. But so I just want to try and understand how they look at it, because they have teams who can look at your drill results and they come up with their own assessments about resource figures, about what it is that you've got there. So the resource, is it really for them? Is it really for those guys, or is it just a little bit, actually we also need to make a statement in the marketplace for retail shareholders who obviously hold a big position in this too?
Yeah, I mean, you look at what happened with GT Gold, and they came out with a maiden resource estimate, and then they were working on a PEA, and I don't think we'll ever see that PEA that they were working on, but they were working on it. So, I don't think that, I think the work that we're doing is for ourselves as a company, right? We're not doing something at the behest of, one of our other existing shareholders, and that will continue to be the case as long as we're an independent company. So.
Okay. Got a new IR person. You've got some drilling going on. What are we going to hear about next?
Hope to have some news on assays in November, probably initially on KSV, and then also on Sofia as well. Okay,
fantastic. I'll look out for them.
Yeah.
Joseph, I better let you get back to the baying crowd downstairs.
I have to get back to the booth. So, thank you very much, Matt.
See you soon. Cheers, Joseph.
Okay, thank you.